July 17th, 1996. JFK International Airport. It's a hot, humid summer night in New York City. TWA Flight 800 sits at the gate, awaiting departure.
TWA 800 had a flight plan to go from New York to Rome with a layover in Paris. On board the flight that day, there was a total of 230 people. There were 192 passengers, 18 crew members, and 20 off-duty employees. Most of them, they were there because they were working the second leg of the flight.
At 8:07 p.m., the crew fires up the engines. The plane taxis out to the runway. And at 8:19 p.m., TWA Flight 800 takes off into mostly clear skies.
The air traffic controller is communicating directly with these airplanes. Each one has a call sign. Each one has a transponder, which tells the plane position to air traffic controllers.
At 8:30 p.m., air traffic controllers give TWA 800 clearance to go from 13,000 to 15,000 feet. This is their last communication with the plane.
So Flight Engineer Campbell goes ahead and adds climb thrust, and they start climbing up to 15,000 feet.
At 8:31 and 12 seconds, there's a transponder ping with the Pennsylvania Air Traffic Control Station. Then something strange happens.
Just 12 minutes after takeoff, Flight 800 disappears from radar.
A disappearing blip is pretty alarming for an air traffic controller. So they tried to contact them, but there was no response. And then they were asking for nearby airplanes to tell us what was going on.
We just saw an explosion out here.
This pilot flying over Long Island calls in and says he's seen an explosion in the air. The pilot reports that this explosion occurred at about 16,000 feet over Long Island Sound.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
And suddenly, reports start coming in from pilots all over the area.
We saw 2 fireballs go down in the water. There's a big smoke storm coming up from that.
Something has exploded and the debris just rained down into the water.
They just went down to the water.
And then there's an outpouring of reports from people on the ground. They report seeing a big fireball and also debris just raining out of the sky.
Emergency radios sound the alert. There's a major plane crash into the ocean, and the search is on for survivors.
Virtually anything on the water in the vicinity is moving into the rescue area, and they're there so quickly that there's actually falling wreckage still coming out of the sky. There's burning debris. It's mass chaos.
And from all of this wreckage, they can actually see that this was the 747 from Flight 800.
They were able to recover close to 95% of this aircraft from the bottom of the ocean. And once that process was done, the FBI was able to send samples of the aircraft into the lab to check for any sort of residue. And there was a very small trace of an explosive residue that was on a floor panel.
Because trace amounts of explosives were found, the FBI focused on the possibility that maybe a bomb was placed on this airplane.
But there's another possibility.
Just a few days after the accident, one of the investigators sees that the center wing tank bowed out. So something happened to make the center tank explode from the inside out. Aircraft fuel tanks are considered explosive environments, and they have to be isolated from ignition sources because you don't want to have any chance that something will ignite in those areas because there's fuel there.
Captain Kevorkian's statement about the strange readings from the fuel tank gives investigators a clue as to the source of this fuel tank explosion.
You have electrical components inside the central fuel tank to tell you if they're running short on fuel. But if a short circuit somewhere causes a high amount of voltage to arc between two pieces of metal inside an area filled with fuel vapor, a catastrophic explosion is likely to occur.
The NTSB believes that's exactly what happened.
So the NTSB theory is that there was an electrical spark that exploded that tank outward and blew the aircraft apart.
The inescapable conclusion that the cause of the in-flight breakup of TWA Flight 800 was a fuel-air explosion in the center wing tank.
Investigators hone in on the electrical system, which connects the fuel gauges to the tank. Looking for what could have caused the explosion, they find evidence of frayed wiring and damaged installation in the maintenance reports.
They see that there are anomalies in the electrical system. The wire, which has gone in 25 years earlier, has been subjected to vibration and salt and chemicals and pressurization and abrasion.
The wires were the ones installed back in 1976 or so and hasn't been replaced. Some of those wires would fray, some of the installations start to break, and if they short, now you have your ignition source.
Not everybody is satisfied with these conclusions.
This explanation faces a couple problems. Number one, it's coming so late, people have gotten used to the idea that perhaps there was a terrorist involvement. But secondly, it's only their best guess, like a multiple choice test where you don't know the right answer, but you can rule out most of the rest. They think this is the right answer, but they cannot point to absolutely conclusive evidence.
We know that the center fuel tank exploded. We've known that for a long time. We don't know what initiated that explosion.
While evidence strongly points to degraded wiring, the NTSB is never able to pinpoint the exact cause of the explosion.
It becomes very difficult in the aftermath of TWA Flight 800's destruction to determine how such a spark might have reached the fuel vapors inside the central wing fuel tank.
By the time the investigation results are announced, many people are dissatisfied and they wanted answers, and the federal government just wasn't able to give them answers quickly enough.
The Transportation Board still insists that the investigation is and should be closed.
The recovered wreckage of TWA Flight 800 was kept in a hangar outside Ashburn, Virginia for 25 years and was used as a training aid for other NTSB investigators.
Families had nothing. Many of them did not have the remains of their loved ones. Allowing them that opportunity to go into the hangar, seeing the wreckage, had to be a tremendous relief to them.
You know, losing somebody is extremely hard, especially if you don't get to say goodbye to them. But this is also such a big moment because the lease is done with this building and they're gonna destroy all of the pieces. So it's kind of forcing a lot of these families to really say goodbye. You know, like the book is closed, the chapter's closed.
But we may never definitively know why TWA 800 crashed.